Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and what I've been doing is I've been learning web components. So if you saw my last video where um, I went over how to create web components using standard browser APIs, um, I went and started building my own component library. So I built a couple components, but then I went a little further than that. So these are just a couple really basic components. And then I ended up making these functions to help work with these components to kind of give you features kind of like, having state and reactive data and all that stuff. And I feel like I created a couple really cool, useful functions that make this library that I'm building pretty cool. It's called the Merced UI Library. And I figured right now there's basically two components and two functions. I'll probably add much more over time. Not too much more, because the idea is I want this to be something that you can kind of use. Gives you a lot of sort of the features of like a React, Angular, Vue, whatnot. A lot of that reactiveness, but without the bundle size. Okay, but without having to worry about like compilers and all this stuff like Svelte and Stencil. You just basically you can literally just put this as a CDN link in your in your code and function. So let's set this up. So I'm going to create a new project. So let me create a new folder. I'll just actually just do it inside whatever. New folder. Call this UI prac. Okay, and in that folder, I'm going to create a new file. Not a new folder, a new file. And that new file will be index.html, our good old friend index.html. And we're also going to have a new file, app.js. Neat. Okay, so in our index.html, we will have our boilerplate. And then we are going to do a script tag for our app.js. Then we're going to have another script tag. Script tag. Okay, and in this script tag, we're going to have our CDN. So, where's my doc? Here's my doc. So here I have a CDN link right here. So you can just use this link to go grab the library. Got a lot of stuff open. There we go. And then that should bring in that library. I'm going to put a defer keyword on both. So that way they don't load up until after the DOM has loaded. So that way they can work their magic. Save. Cool. Now the first thing we have is that there's actually already two built-in components. So technically already I can just load in. There's a couple components I can just load in. There's Merced Container, which just basically creates a flexbox div. Merced Container. This just creates a flexbox div. Okay, save. And then inside, and then you can put whatever you want inside the div by just putting it in between the two tags. So I will put in h1 hello world slash h1. Okay, so I'll save that. Let's actually load the file. So already we're seeing the library come to work. Show file, show in file manager. Let's open this in Chrome. Cool. And you can see here, like it's 90% width. It's a 90% width flexbox div. Okay. Now, if you want to, there's a couple different properties you can use. I didn't make it too customizable at the moment. So you can do though is if, like, let's say I wanted to justify the content a particular way, I could pass in any of those normal flexbox properties. Like let's say I want to justify space between, so I can specify that. And if I want to align it horizontally, I can change that as well. So I can like align it center, and I can specify a height if I want to. So I can specify a height. We'll say 300 pixels. Okay, save. Okay, and so you can see like it has a height. So let me just bring out the inspector. As you can see here, here's the Merced Container. Okay. All part of this. See this whole hello world component here. Okay. Inside that component's shadow DOM. Okay. Neat. And then I can put multiple hello worlds in there, so let's do that. Let me just keep skipping over to that. Control C. Save. Okay, so you have that out of the box. You can have this container, which is nice. It does what most containers do. It gives you that sort of, you know, flexboxy 90% with container. Okay, neat. So that's only one of the two components that I've created so far. The other component is a card. But to show you the card, we're going to go into the JavaScript. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of these hello worlds. I want to change the ID of this to cont, so we can grab it in our JavaScript. Okay, save. Okay, so there we are. Now we're going to go to our app.js. We're gonna now create an array with what we want to print to the screen. So equals hello world, goodbye world, meh. Okay, so there's my array, and I want to print this to the DOM. Okay, now I've created a cool function called map to DOM. Okay, basically works like map, where basically you're going to pass in a callback function, and that function, except that you don't want to, it just doesn't take, what you want to do is return a string. Okay, and then instead of returning you an array of the return value of the function, it's going to concatenate all the strings that the function returns and then append it to the DOM. So you'll see what I mean in a second. So we're going to pass in my array. Okay, then we have a callback, and just like any callback you would do with like the higher order array functions, you know, you can pass in the value and the index. Okay, and then there's one more argument, which is the DOM element you want to connect it to. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to store that in a variable first. So we'll say const container equals document dot get element by ID and cont. Okay, I just cont. Okay, so we're gonna so basically when this is all done, it's going to attach the string to this container div. Okay, so what I want to do is that I want to, which the container div is the Merced Container component. So what I want to do is that for everything in my array, I want to create a card. So we're just going to do a return, and then we're going to use some backtick so we can use interpolation, and just do my HTML in here. So so basically what we're going to do is we're going to do a Merced card. That's another component we have in here, which creates a 300 pixel width card. Okay, with a column flex grid type structure, Merced card, and in that Merced card, we are going to have the variable, which is value. Okay, so then we'll just say value is at, so I'm just using interpolation to use my data, and then I close Merced card. And Merced card, kind of like Merced Container, has some properties. So I'm going to give it a border. So the property for the border is the border equals, we'll say it's 5 pixels. I think it's dotted green. Okay, so it'll be like a dotted line, 5 pixels dotted green. I think that's it. So essentially what happens is that this function is going to run, it's going to return this string for each of these. So it's going to return one with hello world, one for goodbye world, one for meh. But it concatenates all of those strings into one big string, and then appends it to the inner HTML of the container, or whatever you pass in as the element you want to pass it to. So again, 3 arguments: the array, the callback, and then the container, or the thing you're attaching it to. So now if I save that, let's just make sure that's all looks good. Okay, no errors. Thank you, Eastland, for checking. Now if I refresh this, okay, and there you go. Okay, hello world is at 0, goodbye world is at 1, meh is at index 2. Okay, so basically I've mapped it to the DOM. Neat. Okay, now that's fine, but one of the benefits of using something like React or Angular is as the data changes, the DOM updates. Okay, so I was thinking, okay, how can I make that happen? Okay, because map to DOM kind of works kind of nicely. I kind of like how that works, because it still has a sort of JSX I'm doing HTML field, but I don't have to worry about all those JSX rules. I just plop in JavaScript and interpolate my variables. And I don't have to worry about where my variables are defined. I don't have to worry about any of these things. Okay, and I can use other variables that are not part of whatever, anything that's sort of in scope, which is very cool. But I would like to re-render this if that array changes. So what I did is I created a function called bind data. It does the same thing because it technically is going to run map to DOM, but what it does is going to return you a function. So it does the same thing, same syntax, bind data, same 3 arguments, but now I'm going to create a formula called, I'm going to do const update, we'll just say update cards equals bind data, because this function is going to return an update function in the same way that you would have like set state in React. Update cards will be the equivalent of set state, so I can actually just call it that, set cards. Okay, so now later on, let's say I create a button. So let's create a function, const add 1 equals, no parameters for now, it's just getting the point across. Okay, so what this will do is it's going to take my array, the array that we have in existence, and push a value into it. Push 1, push the value of 1 into that array, and then I call the update cards function. Okay, and then I pass in the new value of my R. Okay, so I pass in the new version of the array, and it'll just automatically update everything. Okay, cool. And now I need to actually create a way to access that function. So let's go back to our index.html. Let's add a button. We can put it in the container. Button, click me, /button. And in this button we'll have an onClick event, and the onClick event will be add 1, save. If I hit refresh, okay, where did that button go? Oh, because it re-renders the inner HTML of that. I didn't think that through. Wrong file. Here we go. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make another Merced container just for the button, just so that way it stays within the width. So, and again, that's a cool thing about components. I can use them over and over again. Container /Merced container. Okay, and then remove the button there, because the reason is, the one thing about using the map to DOM function is that it essentially replaces the inner HTML of your target. Okay, it doesn't append, so that way you're not worrying about like this buildup. So it's going to replace it every time. So I'm generally going to want to keep that Merced container empty if I'm going to use it as my target. Okay, or put the button inside the code. I could also do that. Merced button on click, add 1, click me. Let's think here. Yeah, that works for me. but I do want to center this, so we're going to say justify content. Let's make it center. Cool. Save. Now let's refresh. There we go. We have the button. Now when I click the button, again, I'm going to just turn this off. When I click the button, it should just add 1 to the array, and then it's going to re-render it. Okay. Oh, wait. We made somewhere. I did not connect this right. Let me take a look at our code. So I'm saying click add 1. Yes. Let's go back to our code. There's the add 1 function. Oh, that's right, because we made the function called set cards now. Set cards. Save. Okay, and just to kind of remember what set cards is, that's the function that bind data return. The cool thing is that you can change the data using set cards, and then it reruns that map to DOM function and re-renders it, so you don't have to like pass in a whole new callback and do all that stuff over again. You can just basically rerun it, and it just automatically reruns it every time you update the data. So now let's do this again. There it goes. See, it just adds. Every time I click on it, it's adding 1 to the array, and the array re-renders to the DOM. Okay, kind of like React, except it's not based on a component. Okay, in the sense, I can be pulling in data from anywhere, all this stuff. A little less encapsulated, but reactive, which is neat. Okay, and again, if you want, and then you can use it within your. If you want it to be reactive, you could use it within your components. So you could actually use this function to design your own components, and then include this function inside there to create some reactivity. Even though there are some API aspects, I forget what it's called, but there's like some ways to create sort of like reactive data in the native browser API. So that's possible, but this is neat. I was very stoked about how this function works. Cool. That's pretty much what the library has right now. So again, you can use the map to DOM function, which will map it once. You can use the bind data function, which will map it to the DOM, return you a function, so that way you can update it. You can update the data, and then it'll re-render when you update the data. And yeah, that's pretty cool. So if you want to use it, again, the documentation's here. I'll be adding more components to it. I might add other functions to it. I just haven't thought. They'll probably come. I'll probably think of them as I go along and run into situations where I might need another helper function. I'm not going to try to add too much to it. Because one of the benefits is having these features without sacrificing too much bundle size. So otherwise, I'll see you guys later on. Thank you very much.